begin the study session of April 7th. And let's start with public comment on agenda item. We have somebody, I understand, that's going to comment tonight. Two of you? Okay. Come on to the podium. This is on subjects that are on our agenda tonight. Okay, thank you.
My name is Christine Disney, and that's Disney, and I live on Balsam Street. And I'm here to talk about the traffic management plan. Last summer, my neighbor and I went around and gathered signatures from the neighbors that live on Balsam between 41st and 38th. And we got all but 3 houses to sign the petition, and we were requesting traffic calming measures. I had this all planned out where I was going to have you all close your eyes and visualize that you're out in your yard and you're working in your yard and you see cars going by that are going faster than 25 miles an hour, and try to imagine what that might feel like for yourself. I was going to come with more hard evidence about how fast the cars go down Balsam Street. I timed cars from the corner of, I believe I live at it's about 40th to my driveway, and I was going to stand out there in time and see how many cars were going the speed limit. I know what a car going 25 miles an hour looks like, and I know what a car going 40 miles an hour looks like. And there are a predominance of cars that use Balsam to cut through from 44th to 38th. It's worse during the rush hours of morning and afternoon traffic, but the speed limit in that neighborhood is 25 miles per hour, and there shouldn't be any cars going any faster than that. There are a lot of people with children moving into the neighborhood, as you've been hearing lately. A lot of people walk through my neighborhood. Last summer, we saw a car going at least 50 miles an hour through there, and oftentimes I yell at people to slow down. And this guy went around the corner, came back, and there was a woman with a stroller walking her young granddaughter, and he sped by her. So we had a witness then. I yelled at a gentleman last summer who got out of his car, walked up onto my lawn, and threatened to hit me. And when I told him to please go ahead, he stopped because his wife got out of the car to stop him. It turns out that he was a neighbor. So it's not just people cutting through to avoid traffic on Wadsworth. People don't have respect for the fact that it's a residential area and you should drive the speed limit. So I am pleading with the council to possibly consider, and it's also a common complaint on Allison, which is another block over, and my neighbor couldn't make it, or my friend couldn't make it tonight. A lot of people taking their kids to the grade school speed up and down these streets as well. I think it will get worse once Sprouts shows up at 38th and Kipling, because people will cut through to avoid the light at 44th and Kipling and to avoid the traffic on Kipling. So next time there's an opportunity to speak to the council, I plan to come with more hard evidence, but I'd like to thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. That was close. Yeah. Your name and address, please, sir.
Okay, my name is Scott Shepard. I live at 7 Twilight Drive. Just wanted to let you know that I'm also in support of the traffic management program. The reason being is because we live on a residential street, and it naturally invites speeding. So this is a particular concern since we have 2 small children, and our neighborhood recently experienced a fatality due to excessive speeding and impaired driving. So anything the city can do to help us mitigate this risk, I'm all in favor. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No. Is there the agenda, is there any changes to the agenda tonight? Okay, let's move on with the Cultural Commission update with Diane Robb. Diane, if you want to sit here, that would be fine.
Just turn your mic on, Diane. Push your button there. Okay. Hi, I think most of you, all of you, know me quite well. I'm Diane Robb, and I'm Chair of the Cultural Commission, just giving the council an update of what we are up to. In your packet should have all the information that I am going to speak on tonight. We have 4 new commissioners on this 9-member board this past month, so we are in the process of finding our legs, so to speak. But we are moving along. We are a very active commission anymore. Part of it is the Public Art Fund. And we are so excited. We have approximately $36,000 now in that Public Art Fund, which is very exciting. We are holding it tight for a major public art project, which at this time, we are looking at probably it will be going for artwork on the Gold Line. And we will be working in conjunction with RTD on that. And they have some matching funds. We don't know specific amounts yet, but with some matching funds, we can do a very major art project on the Gold Line, which is very exciting. Kendall Park. There is monies from the open space and parks that is going in, and we have approximately $29,000 for a piece of public art. We have put out a call to artists, and we have an acquisition committee that has already met and is working on it. And if all goes well, when the park opens here in July, we'll be able to have a major piece of public art there in the park. Performances in the park, all of you are very aware of that. Runs from the second week of June through the first week of August. And Wednesday mornings are children's programs. The average attendance is about 200. And then Wednesday evenings are family programs, and we have an average attendance of about 400, which is very exciting. Very exciting. Meet the Artist series. We consider it to be a very successful program. We invited visual artists and businesses to work in conjunction, and we would go into a business, the business would host, and the visual artist would present their work and talk about their work. And we honestly were so impressed with the quality of artists and the number of artists that live here in Wheat Ridge. We were all amazed and very, very excited. This coming year, we want to continue Meet the Artist, but this time it will be Meet the Performing Artist. And so we have a large population of performing artists here, guitar players and singers and poetry writers. And so the program will continue where once a month we will have that. And we like to work in conjunction with businesses, and it highlights businesses, and also it gives the community an opportunity to meet the artists that live here in Wheat Ridge. Wheat Ridge Reads. Last season, we did Halfway to Heaven, which was very, very well received. And this season, we have chosen The 16th Rail by Adam Schrager. And most of you probably are familiar with him. He was a Rocky Mountain News person. And he has written this book. It's about the scientific evidence behind the Lindbergh kidnapping. And so we will have one book discussion on this in the library, because we are working jointly with the library. And then we're going to have a Books and Brews meeting, and where we will be meeting at the Colorado Plus, and the author will be in attendance and to discuss the book. And I thought that would be just very fun, very fun. The Cultural Commission Business Award last year was awarded to Teller Street Gallery. Please, if everyone would keep their eyes and ears open to recommend somebody for this year. We're always looking for nominations. And then we're working closely with Ridge at 38th. We don't have anything solid to report, but we're working closely with them, and there's a lot of communication going on with them. Also, there was a discussion on applying through the Colorado Creative Industries through the state of Colorado to become a Creative Arts District certification. And after numerous meetings and plowing through all sorts of paperwork, the decision was made that we would not apply this year, but probably apply next year for the Creative Arts District certification. And that is a certification where the state has funds to assist areas, and that's very broad, areas, with professional input and financing and so many other things to really create an arts district. So we're looking at creating 38th Avenue, Ridge at 38th as an arts district. It was too early this year to do it. It just wasn't, we all felt it just wasn't quite ready yet, but next year you'll be hearing more about the application process. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes.
Diane, have you identified any projects with the fund that we have, the Public Art Fund, that is added to every time we have a Public Works project? Have you, as the Cultural Commission, come up with any ideas for that funding to use it for any certain artwork in the city?
You know, the public arts funds of the 36,000 that we have, the commission has actually put together a priority list. We have toured every park and every area here of Wheat Ridge, and we have put together a priority list of where we think it would be appropriate for public art. At this time, the Gold Line keeps coming to the forefront. And then there's a whole list. If you would like me to forward our priority list, I certainly can. And we have discovered that the priority list has changed over the last few years. We go back and look 5 years ago, what was priority, and it is not the same as what it is today. And that is because of all the changes in the city.
And you said the balance in that fund is about 36,000?
It's approximately 36,000. We have had numerous discussions about, do we want to use the funds for a little bit here, a little bit there, a little. And right now, the feeling of the Cultural Commission is we're holding tight to the funds so we can do something major.
Good.
Like a major piece of artwork at the Gold Line. And basically, to be in line with some of the other stops on the light rail. We want to show off Wheat Ridge at the Gold Line.
Were you thinking of a blue horse with red eyes?
It came up. Yes, Bud.
Thank you very much. This is a very nice presentation and a really active group, it looks like. And just sort of for my edification and perhaps some other viewers or some of the audience, tell me a little bit more about performances in the park. Like what park, or does it rotate?
You know what? It just stays at one park. It's down at Anderson Park.
Okay.
And basically because there's the bandstand there, the covered patio, not covered patio, but covered area.
Right.
Right. And so, and there's electricity there.
Yeah,
and so that is why this program has been going on for years. And each year we find it's a little better attended, and we try and bring in new performers every year. The one that is consistent is the last performance in the park every year. We always have Hot Tomatoes, and because people seem to enjoy them and they dance, And we have upwards of over 550 people usually attending that performance in the park.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked because we used to have sort of a mobile van
I remember
and it
that.
used to go to Panorama Park.
I remember
And that
that.
was obviously in District 1, and we were very thrilled for that, so that's why I wanted to know. But thank you very much for letting us know
And
that.
I don't know what happened to that mobile.
The state of repair on it was so expensive that they decided that
It wasn't worth it.
back room, back garage. Diane, that's very, very complete, and thank you. Very, very nice. Any other questions? Nope. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Diane.
Okay, let's move on to our next subject, which is the Pure Street Bicycle. Scott, would that be you?
Yes, back in February 10th, we came to study session to present the Pier Street bicycle improvements. Actually, I think that was the city council meeting where the council directed staff to go ahead and start conducting a public process to put bicycle improvements, on-road striping on Pier Street. At that meeting, we presented the different options that are possible out there on Pier Street. There's dedicated bike lanes is one option. Other options include a shared lane, kind of similar to what we have between 32nd and 26th Avenues right now, where you have kind of like a shoulder stripe there, but it can double as a bike lane or parking. When there's not cars parked there, the bikes can use that, was another option. And then the other option out there was sharrows, which is, you know, the marking on the pavement that tells motorists and bikes that this is a shared bicycle and auto facility. In starting the public process back on March 12th, we had a public meeting here at City Hall in the council chambers. Had a good turnout, 45 people showed up. There was a good mix of residents that live right there on Pier Street. We wanted to get feedback from the Pier Street residents on their parking needs, because what will drive what we can and can't do out there on Pier Street kind of depends on whether we preserve parking or not. And right now there's parking allowed on both sides of the roadway. And to make it even more challenging is Pier Street itself, as you go the whole length of the city from 26th up to 48th, the width of the street varies. Some places it's narrower, some places it widens up quite a bit. Some places there's curb and gutter, other places there's a gravel shoulder where people can park, so that kind of makes it hard too if we're looking at trying to do something consistent down the whole corridor and still meet everybody's needs. But we got some good feedback. There were some folks at the meeting that were concerned about losing their parking. We also had people that came out and really supported the project too, and emphasized how much the improvements are needed out there. So we got a good mix, and after the meeting we went back to look at it further. There seemed to be pretty strong support that protected bike lanes was the first preference, and if we couldn't get that, then look at the other options. So Mark Westberg, that's here with me tonight, took a little harder look at that. As far as the width that was available, the parking that's needed out there, the comments we received, and looked to see just what it would take to actually do that, to put dedicated bike lanes on each side. It turns out it looks like we can do that and still preserve a good chunk of the parking, at least on one side of the roadway for most of the roadway. We do need to look at it further, just because in order to do that, because of the variable widths and so forth, we would probably have to remove the center striping, the double yellow turn lane that's in the center line that's in the middle of the roadway now, and that may have to get shifted in some places. And we need to look at that closer to make sure we're not, messing up how the center of the roadway lines up at the intersections with the signals. And, we don't want a street too where people are driving and the whole length the center line is weaving all over the place, so we can have bike lanes there. So we're going to look at that a little closer. We're also going to look at the cost of that too, because if there's more paint, more striping with that, also because we'd be potentially removing the center line that's out there now and restriping that. So our intent would be to actually go out and get some numbers, some actual hard costs for what it would cost to do that, and come back to council and let you know what that would be, because we do have right now $63,000 in the budget allocated for this. So we'll take another look at that. Looking at the schedule here, we like to go back to the neighborhood meeting with another neighborhood meeting on May 7th. Just let them know where we are with the process now, kind of let them know what feedback we've heard from council, where we're going from this. That would be May 7th is what we're scheduling right now. Later on in May, possibly early June, we would actually go out and get bids, have some hard numbers to present, and then come back to council shortly thereafter that with a proposed project that we could hopefully get started on later this summer. So that's where we are, and I guess we're just kind of looking for some feedback from council tonight. If looking at the report, if there was any questions, anything left out, more information you need to know before moving ahead further.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
On two spots on the map here, it's uncolored. Does that mean no change or no parking? What does that mean?
Yeah, that would mean no parking at all on both sides. Like, for example, 38th Street, just south of 38th Street for about one block there. And part of that, I think, is the intersection itself, too, because we have turn lanes that we're starting to transition into as well.
Mr. DiTullio?
Go ahead, bud, I'll go next.
Thank you. Scott, when I was looking at your Exhibit A, and we had sort of the choices of on-street parking, off-street parking, and shared parking and bike. And I had a question. There were some boxes with some numbers and some, like 1 bike lane, 2 undecided, 3, 1 no comment, and 1 bike lane, and then 3 keep parking, and 2. Were those citizen? Is that citizen input?
Right, yeah, what those are, those little notes you see on the side there are comments that we received at the information meeting on March 12th. What we did was we had a kind of a few big, long, I think they were aerial photos maybe, of Pierce Street from one end to the other, and just asked people, we had little yellow stickies and just said, if you need your parking or you don't need it, write your comments on a little sticker and put it on there, yeah.
Mr. DiTullio?
Thanks. Based on the conversations you had with the neighbors, was options 1, 2, or 3 more desirable for those folks living on Pierce that use on-street parking? Because I'm assuming option 2 would be more palatable to them to option 1.
Yeah, it kind of depended on, I think, individual parking needs and where they were located. For example, one on the Exhibit A there, if you look at just north of 32nd Avenue, we did get a significant, or at least a fair number of comments from residents there that really their parking was precious to them and they really wanted it preserved. And there were some other locations along Pierce where people were more, we're fine with losing parking on one side. The bike lanes are needed, that kind of thing. So comments did vary.
Well, I guess if you're asking for, council's feedback, I would support the option that everybody has a win-win here a little bit. So if option 2 is that option where the parking still stays for the residents, plus you have the sharrows and some bike lanes, I would be supportive of the option 2.
Yeah, and there's different ways we can do this too. It's not like a all or nothing thing. There's we could have a bike lane on one side of the roadway and sharrows on the other side. There's different ways we can do this too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Ms. Davis?
So my recollection, I just have a question. My recollection from when you did have the pictures and you had them from, 32nd to 38th and, all the way down. Yeah. So my guess is from those pictures is that some of the bike lane possibilities might differ by area. Is that correct? So I know we had talked about from 32nd to 38th, the traffic's higher there. Mm-hmm. So if we can have a designated bike lane in those areas, right. Because the traffic and the flow, but perhaps when you get down more 46 to, over in that area, mm-hmm. the streets wouldn't support, as, you know, maybe the separate bike lanes, but we could perhaps have sharrows or something. So just a clarification, my understanding is that the bike option or the bike lane or the bike accommodations might vary as you go down Pierce. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. As you mentioned, north of 44th Street, the traffic level, or 44th Avenue, the traffic levels do really drop down. It's more like a typical residential street there, and there we've suggested we think sharrows are okay. If there's really a strong push, by council that we'd still like to see bike lanes there, we could certainly look at that, but based on the traffic levels there, we think sharrows are fine. The rest of the roadway, though, yeah, the traffic levels are a lot heavier and speeds faster.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. With respect to that threshold, is there a particular threshold where bike lanes should exist where in other areas they don't exist? Because I guess what's that threshold of needing a bike lane on a residential street?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific numerical metric for that. I mean, in a general sense, where you have higher volumes and faster speeds, the protected lane is more preferred. Sharrows are probably more appropriate for, like a residential street or where we have north of 44th Avenue, though. But it kind of context for the area, though, too, plays into that. If there's parking there or not parking or residential or business. I mean, you can drive around town, and there's places in Denver that are very, very busy street, and they have sharrows on the road, and if that's all they can do there. I mean, ideally you would want something better there, but if that's the best they can live with, that's what they have. So it can vary, yeah.
I guess there seems to be some threshold between north of 38th and north of 44th, but to me, those two areas there's not a dramatic drop off between those two, and I'm curious why we wouldn't allow sharrows on both sides of Pierce Street north of 38th.
Yeah, I don't recall what the counts are specifically, but between 38th and 44th, they are still pretty heavy. I think several thousand vehicles per day in that area, and then when you get north of 44th, it drops way down like less than 1,000. So there is a significant drop there.
And I mean, and my thought is that the number of counts coming into that area are related to the church in that area, and so it could be that if they're coming to that destination, it's not like they're zipping through, they're coming to a stop there.
Right.
It's not as though it's not like a thoroughfare coming through there. So I'd be one to encourage the use of sharrows or whatever we can to reduce the impact of this.
Okay.
Hey, Scott, if I could address that.
you bet.
The traffic from 38th down to 26th was about 6,000 cars a day fairly consistently. And then from 38th to 44th, it was 4,000 cars a day. So it didn't drop off a lot, but it did drop off some. North of 44th, the nearest count we had was up towards the north end of that, up by 48th, and it was like 400 cars a day. So it's a really, especially with that school being closed, that's up off of 44th there, Martinson. The traffic north of 44th is really a lot lower than what it is. Right at 44th, there's probably a little bit more, but north of there, it's a lot lower than what we see. It really acts more like a local street than the collector street we have south of 44th.
Well, and I guess the other question there is that it's sort of depending on when those numbers are captured, and not knowing the fate of that Martinson site, we're not really certain as to how those counts go. I mean, yeah, the count at 48th and Pierce is going to be markedly lower than anywhere else. It's a dead-end street. But if I'm just thinking of this spot right here, the main amount of traffic coming into that area is coming to a destination in that area, so it's not like they're zipping through there.
Yeah, and part of the concern too with that location was that often at the church, people are parking there through the day. And so a lot of these other locations, people mostly park there at night when they're home. And so if it was a shared parking bike lane kind of thing, it would be open in most places. But at the church in particular, it would definitely be full of cars. At least that's been our experience. Okay. That was the concern with not having a dedicated bike lane at the church itself.
And has there been any communication with the church regarding these plans or any discussion with them at all?
We invited them to the meeting, just like all the other property owners and businesses along there. They a representative didn't come, so we haven't done specific outreach, but we certainly can.
Mr. Starker?
Scott, was it your feeling that if we ask you to move forward with option number 2, that we could, as Mr. DiTullio has phrased, create a win-win situation with the local residents and the bicycling community? I mean, do you think we've got a good answer here?
Where option 2 is having the dedicated bicycle lane on one side of the street and then the other a shared space.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, that would be a win-win. I mean, we'd still preserve a good share of the parking out there, and and I don't recall if we've looked at it that close yet as far as which side of the street would have the dedicated bike lane and which side would have the sharrows. I think ideally, maybe having the dedicated bike lane going uphill, going south might be better when the bikes are going slower, and then going downhill with the traffic, the sharrows might work out better because they're going to closer speed with the cars, but that's something we can look at closer.
Mr. Pond?
Well, some of my comments or questions may have just been answered, but I guess I'd like a little bit more information on what's the format or the intent or the required outcomes of the May 7th meeting. It's definitely, obviously you've done one already, got some feedback which we're seeing tonight. So what was what's your strategy for the next one? What are you planning on, and what are you hoping to get from that meeting?
Yeah, well, I think depending on maybe what the general feeling is on the council tonight, if there's a certain option on here that that council really maybe wants us to pursue stronger than the others, I think we would convey that to the residents. Hear a few more comments about the parking. Sometimes when we do public outreach like this, we may get the same people back at the meeting, or we may get entirely different people. I've had that experience too. So, we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to be heard, and we get all the feedback we need. But I think part of it too will just be to explain the process and the design a little better. I think by May 7th, some of the questions in a technical sense that we're not able to answer tonight quite yet, we would know those a little better by then, as far as, like I said, the center line striping and things like that.
Okay, well, I think that's probably what I expected, and I think that sounds good. I don't disagree with the idea of trying to find a win-win. I guess I would say that I'd still, I think there's a choice, obviously, with which side, in which direction of travel then you're putting if you go to one versus two, and and I don't know how much data you have or what kind of input you're going to get, but clearly, to me, as a compromise, which I know that's what it would be, I just hope what we do hold on to some of the design and conversations perhaps in that May 7th meeting on option number 1, so that we can still get some feedback, even if you are saying, if that's what the consensus is, that that option number 2 may be the preferred kind of preferred option, that we get some feedback about whether or not making a hard choice about direction of travel is going to hurt us in the long run, or whether this compromise is the prudent compromise again for the long-term facility.
Yeah, and I mean, and we may even find out if we kept looking at option 1 harder. We may find out from a cost or from a practicality standpoint, it may not be viable, or at least, yeah.
So it sounds like the council is leaning toward option number 2, but also would like to keep the door open for option number 1 and perhaps number 3. It's kind of what I'm hearing. Then, when you present this to at the neighborhood meeting, we'll get some more feedback from it. And I also understand that we would probably, the council would like to have some idea about costs before we go forward, which is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Which would be kind of depending upon the combination of ideas, what comes out of it. Would that be agreeable to everyone? Mr.
I think that to make the May 7th meeting fruitful for the residents, that we present them with either a clear delineation of what this will look like, either 1, 2, or 3, or just focus on 2. I'm not sure that the best approach there, but in order to make it fruitful, then to explain to them this is what's going to happen, and then have us vote on that after that meeting to make sure that it doesn't feel like it's just a foregone conclusion, whatever the design may be, and we're just showing it to you so you know what to expect or where to ride your bike. It's giving them an understanding of this is what can happen, and make sure that we get all the feedback so that if there's changes needed from that meeting, that we get that.
Yeah, that's fair, and I think we could do that. We can definitely provide more of a plan than we did, back on March 12th, as far as what it would actually look like, yeah.
When I talked to residents, they said, well, I'm not sure what this looks like. I don't know if you're taking my parking away from me. I have a lot different opinion about it than if you aren't taking my parking away from me. So there's some definite desire to have a concrete plan in front of them to be able to say ostensibly yay or nay. So that's something I think we need to push for on that May 7th meeting, is to show them specifically what the plan is.
Okay.
That sounds fair. Mr. Fitzgerald?
I was just going to say, I think option 2 is probably the best choice, but the setup for that option says in order to preserve the existing centerline location and reserve costs. I just like to suggest that we shouldn't slavishly try to preserve that we have the option to move it if the situation requires. It makes more sense.
I do have a question myself. Since we refer to parking and the possibility of loss of parking, I would assume that no home would lose their parking, that they have maybe a driveway or something like that?
Correct. We're not doing any changes to the roadway itself that would, shorten driveways or anything like that. We're just talking about paint on the pavement. Everything else physically would stay.
So if a parking place was lost, it's due to the fact that the bike lane now goes through that area?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And if I could clarify one thing.
Sure.
Is that the other thing that's possible on the map we have where the yellow areas are highlighted, and they're a little hard to see. Those are places where there's not room on the current asphalt to park, but most people already have like a gravel parking pad or a gravel shoulder that they've constructed on their property. And certainly any of the folks up and in the street that would lose their on-street parking could always, improve something on their lot to get parallel parking back on their lot if they wanted to. And often that would even not so much be on the lot, it'd still be within the city right away. So that, it doesn't completely shut. Now, some people have fences and things like that in the way, and so it doesn't work very well. But for a lot of those areas I highlighted in yellow, those places, if they don't already have sort of a gravel parking pad, then they'd have the option of being able to add something if they chose to. If they really wanted to keep the on-street parking available in front of their house, they'd have a chance of improving something at their property.
Are we good? All right. And you'll give plenty of notice as far as that public meeting? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move up to the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, item number 3. Scott, will that be you again, by any chance?
Yes, back in, last time we talked about this was October, last fall. And at that point, there had been other meetings with council leading up to that October meeting. One of the, in addition to the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, there was some discussion about monument signs and some designs there with that. And I think when I remember back on October 7th, when we had that meeting, there was discussion about whether the monument signs and the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program were actually two different things, or if we should be talking about those in the same breath. And I think council had some good thoughts on that, and where it got left off was budget numbers played into that too. I think when we looked at the cost of the neighborhood signs and what money we had available for the Neighborhood Traffic Program. And at that time, council's direction was to, as far as the monument signs go, if they were a part of traffic calming or part of the neighborhood traffic management program, they were fair game to use as part of that. But as far as a separate program, we thought it would be better from a budget, maybe even a practicality standpoint, to just keep it as part of the traffic program. If the monument signs helped from a traffic calming, and we went through the public process, and that's what flushed out, that would be the way to go. So we also back then presented a draft plan, policy procedure plan for the neighborhood traffic management program. In some ways, we've already been doing this. The police, through the speed trailer, speed enforcement and so forth, has been dealing with neighborhood traffic problems, complaints up until this point. But what this program that we have for you for consideration to talk about tonight is to take it to another level. Whereas if people really want physical traffic calming measures like speed humps and those kinds of things, there's been money budgeted for that, and we have a public process now where people can petition for that, and we can have neighborhood meetings and see if people really want that, and if they do, we've got the means in the budget to go out and do that. Where up until now, there was a program up until I believe about 10 years ago, or maybe more than that, and it was cut. So, our response to residents now or up until now has been, yeah, we can have the speed trailer out there, try some enforcement things, but as far as speed humps, things like that, sorry, we don't have the money. It kind of left it right there. So this gives us a way to go to the next step and allow people to be heard and have a process. So we're proposing to move forward with that, and have a copy of the draft management plan in here. If council has any questions, concerns, we can go ahead and roll that out. I know there's been a couple of inquiries from residents out there already. Petition on Balsam Street that we just already heard tonight. That's one we could move forward with right away. So,
Mr. DiTullio.
Thanks. Scott, the original plan that we had was pretty long process. You had a petition and neighborhood meetings and more neighborhood meetings, and then more petitions sometimes. Would you say this plan is a little bit more streamlined and less onerous on the neighbors if they want to do something on their street?
yeah, I mean we've put this together with a. You'll see there's 7 steps in here, but
It was more before, though, I think.
yeah, but kind of depend on how the process goes. Even the petition itself. I mean, the way it's laid out in here is. In the steps is, we'd have the neighborhood meeting, and then they can submit the petition. But I mean, folks can submit a petition anytime they want. It doesn't necessarily have to fall in that order. But what this does is give us kind of a tool, a roadmap to make sure we're ensuring a fair process. And they'll all be different. I mean, some of these requests might involve a couple blocks of streets, and some might involve a much longer length. So the intent is to have some flexibility with each situation in its own uniqueness.
And then was the the permanent speed boards as a street treatment, the ones that flash but they're permanent, are those still an option for some of the neighborhoods as an option like they have them on Harlan's north of 38th?
Yeah, our policy and our preference is to keep the permanent ones on more of the collector streets where we know there's constant traffic and constant speed, whereas on the residential, the neighborhood streets, we feel the speed trailer is a little more appropriate just because the traffic volumes are lighter and we can move those around and deal with it better that way.
But the permanent ones are still an option for like a busier street like Harlan,
Correct.
south of 38th? Because I know some people think they don't work, but I do. I mean, I've heard neighbors say that they do see people slow down when that starts flashing red
Right.
or blue. So,
Yeah.
but that would be an option. And if a street that was more of a collector street submitted a petition.
Right.
Mr. Starker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to go back to Mr. Brink's opening proposition that because from my point of view, we brought this neighborhood sign program in, a year and a half or so ago as a way to create community in neighborhoods, provide some identity when you're coming into the city that you're entering Wheat Ridge, not an uncommon thing in local municipalities, and provide a context for community. Maybe use historical names for certain districts in the program. And I guess I went back to the memo that you wrote on the September 3rd, the 27th memo last year. It's sort of my feeling that the traffic calming devices and the discussion on traffic calming was an outgrowth of maybe some of these identification signs, and I'll give you one instance, would be appropriate in a traffic calming context. If you think of the intersection at 29th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard, where we have, where we're currently it's in a temporary configuration because we've got Ashland Reservoir, but we've got going east a turn lane and a straight through lane, and there was a little island there that would have been an appropriate island to put a city sign in there with the neighborhood designation and couple that with the traffic calming program. Quite frankly, when I look at the discussion tonight, it looks to me like that the sign program has sort of been hijacked by the traffic calming concept. I don't agree with you because I looked and we identified on the September 27th memo specific locations in the neighborhood for a budget of $100,000. We had a memo that I think these were about, I think for $100,000 we could have bought 8 or 9 signs to put around. We noted the locations on those. It was my understanding that we had appropriated that money to do the signage program, and if it happened to coincide with the traffic calming, so much the better. But now, and I think, I guess it would be my consensus to the council that we decouple these two issues, because I think they don't necessarily go well together. I think you've got a good basis in the traffic calming program, and I think that's certainly a legitimate thing for us to talk about and understand the implications of that. But I really think that we should go back and understand, and go back to the neighborhood signs and entry signs and that program. So that's.
Mr.
Pond tonight.
I used to know somebody else's name close to that. Never mind.
But I think you're correct. Well, I'm not sure about the hijacking part, but but I absolutely agree that they ought to be decoupled. And I suppose in some ways we've kind of that's what's happened is that we've talked about this enough that there are two separate issues. So I agree with that. I think they should be separated. I think from how I felt as we walked out of the retreat, the concept of the monument sign or the sign program and or neighborhood identification program is something that we're all still supporting, and perhaps as we move forward, looking at priorities for how we need to spend money in the economic development and the vitality of our community, that will be an important project. In the short term, I suppose, and from an implementation standpoint, I support the traffic calming management program that's presented, because I think the budget bucket that we have probably more reasonably approaches the beginning of that program than it does a kind of robust look into the neighborhood identification program. That's just my gut. So that's that. I did have a couple questions, if I may, related to the traffic management. Maybe I got to get the NTMP. That's the acronym there. Scott, the one thing that I think I like this. I support it. I do think that it's going to be a work in progress. So one question, and I'll have a couple, so don't answer this right away, but will be how this lives through these processes. If we kind of bless this, and I don't know what the formal blessing is going to be, how much leeway you have to kind of edit the document and edit the process in order to kind of, as you kind of go down and learn these things, because I think it is going to change. I see some things, and this is specific. In step 2, for instance, a lot of these, B, C, and D, I'm assuming as I imagine this that you're working with the point of contact, the person who has essentially got 5 of their neighbors on a street segment to request a specific and permanent calming device, and that you're working with this person and you're going out and you're doing some initial engineering review on that. In here it says, so that's kind of, that's a big question even in that, like how you're going to be doing that. But in here it says, if the street segment is determined to be eligible. And one question that I have is, well, if it's determined not to be eligible, what happens here? Like, are you just coming back and telling the point of contact, sorry, it's not eligible, and then he has to deal with the 5 neighbors, and so we are or we're not having a neighborhood meeting after that? And you even mentioned a few minutes ago that that person could get could do the petition to try to get 80% of the things, and obviously you could see problems if, in fact, where it might put you on the spot, where actually you did some an engineering analysis and determined that maybe this isn't the best need, and yet you've got some people who have gone down the road a bit, no pun intended, so anyway, I support this. I think it's the right thing. I want to make sure that A, we're able to communicate it clearly to people so that they know how to manage this and how to expect it. B, that you guys have something that's with enough flexibility that you can be successful administering it, and that you're not getting yourself backed into a corner. So, I'm sorry, I buried all my questions for you. But.
No, those are all good points. I do see this as kind of a work in progress as well. And sometimes what happens too, you can always get a situation where you have a few residents that really want something badly, like a speed hump or something, and then you have a neighborhood meeting and you get everybody else in the neighborhood. They may not want it, or maybe you find out there's a different treatment that's better. Maybe it's narrowing the street up or putting in striping or something. So it will go through that. Yeah.
Ms. Davis.
So just a couple things. So on the document itself, this is just a minor, okay, picky, but where it says section 4 NTMP, I think that's supposed to be 3, section 3, and then all the sections in between, their numbers just need to change. So 5 needs to be 4 and 6 needs to be 5. So just from a picky thing. And then I like the idea of the program. I think it's, again, I do think it's going to be a work in progress, and just to see the process itself. So I'm excited to kind of see one round go and see how it goes. I'm okay with also separating it eventually, but I do think some of it is the traffic calming that was some of the more urgent suggestions from council or from our constituents. The other thing, I have a question, and you're probably going to know. I knew she was going to ask me this. Where are those little portable speed bumps? We bought them.
Yeah. Well, we
Have
did.
we used them?
We did back last fall before we got into winter. We actually installed them in the Public Works parking lot to test them out, and each speed hump takes something like 50, 60 bolts, long bolts. So they do take quite a bit of effort to not just install, but also remove. And then when you remove them, you've got 50, 60 holes in the pavement too. So we were hesitant to put them out right away just because, we were getting into the snow season and they would have been ripped up by the plows anyway. So now that we're in the spring and we hopefully will have this program going, we would like to put them out somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I guess if we shouldn't have purchased them if we knew what a pain in the rear they were going to be to install and what they would do to the streets. I guess the one suggestion or possibility is when neighborhoods are looking at this and we know we're going to do something with the street, perhaps if everyone's like, yes, we want a speed bump, yes, we want a speed bump, and if we install them, then at least they'd be like, we could be like, are you sure you want speed bumps? Because this is what it's like. You know, could be at least to give the homeowners an idea of really what the speed bump's going to be in your neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of these the ones we purchased, is that they could be removed, whereas the asphalt ones are a little tougher to do that. So we could potentially put that up. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
I just want to also support the decoupling. Oh, I thought it was on already. I want to support the decoupling because I think we do intend that for neighborhood building, and you know, it's my hope that we will eventually have those neighborhoods that will form neighborhood committees. But that's another issue. I support the decoupling. And I want to make a general statement. I'm looking at the reported cut-through streets here. This, to me, is a question of balancing two goods. We essentially don't have north-south streets in this city. We have 3 major streets. And for example, from my house to get to 44th, I do cut through some of these streets in Christie's neighborhood. And I would certainly hope that we try to balance the public issue against the issue of those individuals in a particular block or on a particular street, because we do have to use those streets to get around the city.
There looks like we need some clarity on that. Bud?
I just had another question for you, Scott. In terms of the temporary traffic calming devices that we are able to employ, other than the temporary humps that we bought, we have some radar, a little tow into place,
trailer.
and
Yeah.
speed trailer.
Yeah.
We have 1 or 2 of those, or
We have
2, I believe. Yeah.
and one budgeted to replace it.
Right.
now
yeah.
are these deployed on a continual basis throughout the city?
They are, and they're used pretty heavily too. I mean, when we get requests, there's usually a waiting list for that. We're usually not able to get it out right away, or we get a request and there's usually at least 3 or 4 other places in line ahead of it. So, we don't have any problem keeping those busy.
Okay, and do they seem to be effective?
They do. I mean, kind of like just like enforcement. It's they're effective when they're actually in place and going, and I think. The key too is even if you remove them, if sometime later you get them back there, and it kind of reminds people they work. But if you enforce or have these in place and and you pull them away, and eventually, speeds will get back to where they were.
Yeah, but there's some. I mean, it works for a while and then it doesn't
Right.
really work so
Yeah.
well. And from a cost standpoint, are these terrifically expensive? Are they moderate or?
I think for what we get for the money on them, that they're pretty good. I mean, when you look at the cost of doing these, and as opposed to permanent improvements, I mean, the speed trailers are something we can be real responsive with too. And I think they are effective, and they're pretty well received when we've put them out there too. So, I mean, from a bang for the buck standpoint,
I
we
mean,
think they're effective.
I wonder if we currently have 2 and one's out of commission and they don't cost a great deal and they seem to be effective, and you can deploy them around town and respond to citizens' complaints, and that that may be I think it would be worth looking at kind of how much they cost and if they were effective.
Let me, there's a couple of things going on that I want to make sure we address them as you continue, and Mr. Tully, I'll get to you immediately. One is that we're talking about the separation of the 2, and we need to finish that as far as if there's one that we need to fund first and the other, because obviously we have $100,000 dangling around here, and we need to think about what we need to do. Mr. Goff has pointed out that there was a consensus for staff to concentrate on traffic calming the last time, and implement a neighborhood traffic management program as drafted with the petition process removing final council approval. Carry over the $100,000 budget. So I think we want to make sure that where we're going with this. And the other question that came up as far as communicating with the neighborhoods, does that communication include with the placement of the particular device and the effectiveness of that, how that might affect neighborhoods? So I want to make sure we get through those points. Mr. DiTullio.
Mr. Starker has been really supportive of the neighborhood marking since he got on city council a couple years ago, and I am too. And I think that what I'd like to see happen is that the neighborhood traffic calming program move forward and come to the dais for a full vote as soon as possible with the $100,000 funding. Because that $100,000 sounds like a lot, but I know that if you start getting into islands and speed bumps and things, it's going to go fast. And then I also like to see how far along is the neighborhood marking program, neighborhood marker program. Is that far enough along that could come to council also as a separate item and then a separate budgeted item to actually fund it too? Scott?
You mean the monument signs?
Monument sign, sorry.
Yeah, actually, there was quite a bit of work done on that as far as coming up with different designs and estimates and costs and so forth, so. Right, yeah.
Probably need to have a discussion about the locations again. I think that's kind of what derailed it. We started talking about locations, and then it got into traffic calming, and that's when we kind of were given the direction to focus just on one for now. But I think it's great to decouple them and come back and have a more detailed discussion on the traffic or the neighborhood monument signage and maybe where because the last discussion was, well, every district needs to get some, and so I think there needs to be more discussion on that.
So to finish my train of thought here, so I would support this coming forth to council for a full vote with the $100,000 for neighborhood traffic calming, and then also to separate out the monuments and bring that forward for a study session and then a possible funding amendment to the budget so that we have it funded for this year. And as far as, Mr. Pond had mentioned, in the past, there was neighborhoods that had a petition, but they didn't qualify, and staff and the council people had to say, you just don't have the traffic count or the speed, it doesn't add up. So it's going to be, some neighborhoods aren't going to qualify, even though they feel there's speed and they feel there's noise, there's not enough volume to warrant it. But, and then the last thing I wanted to mention was, like, for example, Harlan Street between 38th and 35th. Before we canceled the program, that stretch of Harlan was going to also be for the stationary and the permanent speed boards. And those are the types of locations where those speed boards, even though they flash and some people think they don't work, they really do slow down the traffic. So I know that the folks on Harlan Street, Bud, between 38th and 35th, we're going to be pulling a petition for that speed board, the permanent one. And I think in the past they were about $6,000 a side, maybe, somewhere around there to install them. Yeah. So it's about $12,000 just to put two of them in on one street. So, but they cover a large area. So that's why I think $100,000 budget for this would be, just for this program, would make sense that we add a budgeted amount for the monument signs. What do you think about that, Bud? Does that make sense to you?
Mr. Urban?
I understand the benefit of the monument signs and traffic calming, and I see where the focus was on traffic calming with regard to the location of the monument signs. Looking at the map as is with the neighborhood entry monument signs, it does look concentrated in one specific area or a couple areas. And so as you move forward with the entry signs for different neighborhoods, there are some areas that look a little sparse and would be nice to see some kind of attention paid to that. But with respect to I would be supportive of bringing that to a vote of the council with regard to the traffic management program and putting that forward.
It looks like that is what we want to do. And is there anyone who disagrees? Looks like Mr. Starker.
If possible, in discussing the management program, if we could have a cost on these temporary,
speed trailers.
Speed trailers,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we can look at that too.
I had just one last question with regard to some of the anecdotal evidence provided by neighbors regarding their interactions with different issues regarding traffic. Is there any information or education that we can provide to neighbors regarding how do they handle traffic in their own neighborhood to avoid confrontations. I saw a sign online that says neighborhood traffic controlled by paintball gun or something like that. That's not an appropriate way to handle it. But looking at water balloon or tennis ball, but trying to come up with ways to educate neighbors about if you are having trouble handling the traffic on your street, this is what you as a neighbor can do, and this is what you as a neighbor shouldn't do to avoid confrontations in your front lawn, like the lady mentioned.
Yeah, and we found at public meetings, our police officers deal with this quite a bit, and they provide some good background and information on that as far as, you know, what you should or shouldn't do in confrontations and that, and so they're real helpful when we have the public meetings.
Okay, let's move on then. We're done with that one. Next item is council district meeting discussion. I believe, would that be you, Mr. Goff?
Yeah, we put this on the agenda just to get some have some more discussion and clarification from council on how they'd like to handle the district meetings. Mr. DiTullio did leave me a message this weekend that it was his understanding that we, as I put in the memo, we decided not to schedule specific dates for the next 2 district meetings, but to potentially leave that open. Right now, originally we had them scheduled for the 5th Mondays, the next 2 5th Mondays in June and September, I believe. Mr. DiTullio can speak to it if he'd like, but I believe his understanding was that we left it open, so maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be those dates, so you can discuss that.
Well, what I remember was when the motion was made for the certain dates, I had made an amendment to not set the council dates, the council meeting dates, until we had a chance to talk as with each other, and then we would come back with some dates for districts 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That was an amendment I made that passed, but it doesn't really matter. I was just clarifying.
Mr. Starker.
Mr. Goff, can you review the history of how we happened to have scheduled, I know last year and I think the year before, is this a long-standing tradition in the city to take these 5th Mondays and do citizen meetings?
It's not. It's not a long-standing history. It's kind of gone back and forth. We used to have more district meetings. They weren't necessarily on the 5th Mondays. I think they were just scheduled by the council members from each district. But I think it's just been the last few years where we've tied them to the 5th Monday just because we didn't have a regular council meeting, and we thought, I think it was actually when Christy started. I think she suggested it. She suggested it. So yeah, not a long history, but there used to be council district meetings, but just they were scheduled when convenient.
Mr. Pond?
So my understanding of the, your request was that just give us time to not necessarily to debate whether we do a meeting on the 5th Monday, but calendars like districts 3 and 4 are going to take the September one versus the June one. Was that right? A different day. Oh, so it could have been a different 5th Monday or a different day. A different day period. Okay.
I don't care. I don't really care.
Ms. Davis?
No, I think I just mirror what everyone has said. I think, what I recollect was that it was, let's go back and check our calendars and see what works best for everyone. So I just know June is approaching quickly. And, as we talk to folks, and I know just with the last town hall meeting and people saying, wow, I wish we had more of those, that it'd be nice to be able to say, well, in June, District 1 and 2 or District 3 and 4, whatever we decide, is having another meeting. And, just to, personally, I'd like to put it on the books. Probably everybody else is like myself, that all of a sudden your Monday nights, your Tuesday nights, your Wednesday nights, everything's getting full. And I'm definitely a first Monday, second Tuesday, third Friday type of schedule person. So I just want to get something on the books, even if it's, ideally Mondays would be great because Mondays are city council nights for me. So every Monday I have blocked off. But, if people want to suggest something else, I just want to get something on the books that we commit as districts.
More discussion? Are we in agreement then that it would be wise of us to go ahead and use those fifth Mondays for the dates that have been suggested here?
I have one small, I agree with that. I do agree that the Mondays are nice because we kind of already have them blocked off anyways. I mean, I just kind of accept that my Mondays are gone until I'm done. The one small suggestion I might make, and I saw at our town hall meeting, is maybe if we're doing them at this rec center, is having some sort of daycare, because we're starting to see more families come to them, which are great. But what do they do with their, what do you do with a small child like that? And then getting babysitters aren't always as easy as you would think.
Good idea. Mr. DiTullio.
I was assuming these meetings would be District 1 and 2 potentially, and 3 and 4 meeting on different times. Okay, that's fine. I'm okay with Mondays, that's fine.
Anybody committed to a certain date as far as District 1 or 2? Is there anybody within a district that can't make one of these dates?
Oh, good point. George, you started to raise your hand.
Well, I was going to say, because that's a good question before I can commit myself, although I am open on Monday, so I think I'm okay. But the the last 2 years we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4. So I wonder if we don't take an opportunity to go 3, 4, 1, 2.
Do we always go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, or could we go 1 and 4 and 2 and 3?
Oh, that's provocative thinking.
Yes.
My gosh.
I like that. I mean, they're obviously they're smaller borders, right? The longer borders are the east-west border. Am I saying that right, or the north? Whatever it is, but I mean, although I'm open to that as well, absolutely.
Well, I guess since one of them is June 30th and I'm out of school by June 30th, that would work better for me personally, but I don't want to make everybody change their plans. But for a District 1 meeting, if that worked for you, June 30th would work for me because we're not in school. You're okay with that?
So have we decided that we're going to mix them up? We're going to have 1 and 4 and 2 and 3? Oh, come on, let's have fun here.
I like the idea, but I also like that, like with 1 and 2, I mean, it's kind of a similar area, so a lot of people have questions of what's going on in their areas. I think there's probably
Wadsworth versus
pros and cons to both, but I mean, I think if you do like a 1 and 2, we'd be talking of 38th Avenue, which both probably would. But then we've got the Kendall Park, we've got the reservoir, the water plant. We've got things going on that are, that group of community versus maybe what's happening on, 32nd and Youngsfield or the Gold Line. So that would be my only reason for not being too provocative.
So nope, okay. So I'm getting it that you would prefer, and it didn't sound like there's anybody, to go with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And, right.
And would you mind doing it here? I just think the parking's easier here than the rec center. Yeah, I just think, something in our district versus. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think the rec center, the parking and stuff too was tough.
I mean, we could also look at,
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys what you want to do.
we could also ask the school district if we could use Martinson or Wheat Ridge 5-8 or one of those as well.
I mean, I guess the thing with Martinson is it's been empty for a long time, so I can't suspect it's, yeah.
I'm not just saying Martinson, but I'm saying.
Yeah,
a school
no, that's
also.
fine. Yeah.
Okay, we're
All right.
falling apart here.
All right, so as
I think
districts,
1
we'll
and
set
2,
up
we're
a
talking
place.
about having on this this end in town, would that be,
Would the Richards Heart Estate work?
I'm flexible, whoever wants to set it up if they want to try.
Going once,
Okay.
going twice?
Monday night, yeah, should be fine.
Monday
I was
night,
gonna say
okay.
that's wedding season, but Monday night should be fine.
All right,
We'd have to check the schedule.
yeah.
okay, let's move on.
Where
Let's,
3, 4 wanna go? You're gonna decide
Yeah.
that later? Decide later.
all right,
Okay.
remember, you gotta decide it yet. Let's move on to staff reports.
And that date would be the
Staff
August the
overlap?
31st, is that what you're looking at?
September
29th.
Is the 5th Monday.
I show the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, and the 28th, or the 29th. Well, I guess you're right.
You're right, that's right.
That's right. I was looking at Sunday, my apologies.
Just remember June 30th, bud. Start first there.
You gonna take care of that? Okay.
Can we move on to
Staff reports?
staff reports?
Yeah, I just want to give you a quick update on the Clear Creek Crossing project. We discussed this during the retreat and may have given you updates and managers' updates and other places, but it's starting to move fairly quickly, and I believe I discussed the strategy with you on moving this project forward is to work with CDOT and the Federal Highway Administration to potentially reevaluate the environmental assessment. We are moving in that direction. CDOT is very favorable of that. But to do it, we're going to have to do another traffic study. And it's probably going to be about $50,000 to get that done. So we don't have the funding for that. So that's something I'd have to bring back at a meeting coming up to approve that. I think it's worth it. It's probably the only way this project's going to get off the ground is to get CDOT and the feds to approve of us to allow us to phase the infrastructure improvements in. Otherwise, it's just going to be too pricey to get anything done. So just a heads up that I'm not sure when. We're working with the traffic engineers right now. They haven't given us a contract yet, but we'd have to have approval from council for that. Any questions on that? Or
Would you use a different consultant than you used the last time?
we did. We've brought somebody else on that has some folks on their firm now that used to work for CDOT and that was involved in the original EA process that was done several years ago. So they understand the process, and they believe that it should be changed and amended to allow us to phase the works. So they've been very helpful. Okay.
Okay. Other elected official reports, meetings you've attended, et cetera. Our treasurer looks like he's getting ready to say something.
Oh, yeah, big announcement. The quarterly report, summary report on our investments is prepared. I forgot to bring it here. I'll put it in your mailboxes. If you have any questions, please get in touch.
Thank you. Ms. Langworthy? Nope. Ms. Davis?
So I have just actually just one thing. So I don't know if you guys recall last year when Mr. DiTullio had us submit articles to the Mayor's Matters newsletter. We kind of did that in collaboration with also doing one for the Gazette. And so I've talked to Tim again, and he would be very happy if we'd be willing to commit to, like the council corner, and that each one of us trade off months. So would you mind if at the next meeting, I think Mr. Fitzgerald is doing the next one, so perhaps at the next meeting I pass around a monthly sheet and everyone could sign up for a month, because I said, well, I'll try and get everyone to commit. And so if we could do that, is that okay with everybody? And if you don't want to commit, you don't have to commit, but that way if people want to have a little article, we could do so. And I invite anyone to come to the Renewal Wheat Ridge meeting on Thursday. We're actually changing it this month because we've got a lot going on with the Kipling project, so anyone's welcome to go to that. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Wooten?
Okay, I've got two things. First of all, we had our first meeting of the school city committee that we're putting together. We had about 15 people. We had a great turnout. We had all the school resource officers, Chief Dan Brennan, Patrick Goff, Joyce, myself, 2 residents, Jill Fellman of the Jefferson County School Board, and Brenda Carlson, who's kind of a district supervisor. We talked about generally what's going on, and then very next day I went on a tour of 6 elementary schools with Jill Fellman and Brenda Carlson. They were wonderful tours, and I'm finding out a lot of information I didn't know before. All the schools I've talked to so far are very interested in improving their relationship with the city and how the city and the community can work together. So it's been a great start. In general, the committee has decided that we're going to meet monthly instead of quarterly because we really want to push this and get it going and make this connection with our schools very important. So going forward, we're probably going to meet monthly, and I still have some other school tours to do. Again, we're going to be doing public schools and all the private schools. So we want a connection with all of our schools here in Wheat Ridge. I hope to have some more reports in a month or 2, and we have some other things planned, but I'm very excited about how well received it has been, that the schools are very interested in how they can work with the community a little bit better. The second thing I have to bring up is about the HEAL, which is Healthy Eating, Active Living. This is an initiative. It's a statewide initiative by Live Well Colorado and Colorado Public Health. And we're also working very closely with Jefferson County Public Health. It's in partnership with the Colorado Municipal League and Kaiser Permanente for funding. In order to move forward with this as a city, we would need to put together a resolution. And there's a no cost to the city to do the resolution, and we would have input and help from Live Well Colorado and Jefferson County Public Health to get this resolution going. The resolution basically says that we as a city acknowledge that obesity, health problems are present in our community and in the United States, and that going forward we will acknowledge that in our policy as far as healthy food in our community, as far as activity, exercise, and how to keep our residents healthy. So what I would like to do is get some consensus that we as a group are ready to move forward on it, and that we might want to put together a resolution. And again, we do have partners that are very willing to work with us, and that would be Jefferson County Public Health, Live Well Colorado, and we would be doing a resolution. Lutheran, yeah, that Lutheran's a big partner, and doing a resolution to move forward with that at a future city council meeting.
Lutheran is a big partner, and they're very excited about us doing this. It's win-win all over the place. So can I get some feedback? Is anybody interested? George, you wanted to make a, nope, thumbs up, okay. Let's see all thumbs up. Nope, that we're good, we want to go. Is there some objection to it? No, none? Okay, let's go forward.
Okay,
with
we'll
that
move
one.
forward with the resolution. Arvada passed theirs about a month ago. Golden is going to pass theirs probably next week. Lakewood is working on theirs. Denver, Aurora, Thornton, they've already done theirs. So we have a lot of others to use as models. So
Great. Mr. Pond, do you have something for us? Mr. DiTullio?
Yes, I wanted to pass out a couple of things. I obviously don't want to have a big discussion about this tonight, but I wanted to pass out some information to council about some things that I've been working on at 2 o'clock in the morning. You can pass them around. And if you need more, let me know. So the 2 things that I wanted to pass around is, first of all, I was just thinking about our discussion at the retreat and what I had said about funding. And so I just proposed on this sheet of paper that has 3 different ballot questions, just ideas about what we could do to fund certain projects and revenue sharing in the city of, or revenue generation in the city of Wheat Ridge. One for 38th Avenue, a ballot question, one for Wheat Ridge Recreation Center, and also for the general fund. These are just ideas, and I don't really expect to have a conversation about it, but I wanted to give you some ideas of what we've done in the past and how things would look to voters. And then the other thing is I gave the same list, I gave that, this drawing to, I met with Rachel Holteen tonight, Jerry Nealon, and a few others. And this is what I was trying to get at when I talked about bike paths. And so what it changed was is you would eliminate the on-street parking, you have a bike lane instead. So you wouldn't lose your 6-foot amenity zone, you wouldn't lose your sidewalk. And at the bottom it got truncated, but it said repeated on the north side. And then this little concrete barrier deal, Gil from Wheat Ridge Cycle like that idea because it's a safety feature. It's a concrete barrier they put in the streets now for safety, and then you would just repeat this on the north side of the street. Anyway, I'm just proposing this because if council was interested, I would like to see us look at two different plans through Entelechy, the current plan that's being funded, and then see how much this would cost to actually fund this one, so we'd have two plans to look at in June rather than one. So I'm not going to say any more about it tonight. I'm not an artist. I don't know, nothing's to scale. The bike's as big as a car, and people are almost as big as a tree, and the curb is as big as anything. But anyway, this was just what I was trying to get at originally, so.
Thank you, Mr. Tullio, and this is interesting, the option thing that we need to get after what we're going to do as far as that. I think we need to get that on our schedule as far as the, what proposal? Got it. All right. Anyone else? Mr. Urban?
No report.
Mr. Starker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have hopefully a short report from some of the measures we've been following at our state capitol. Never a dull moment up there. A few things that we've been tracking, and I want to thank Mr. Urban and Ms. Jay and Nathan Mosley with the city, who's been very helpful in putting these together. Beer and liquor fine in lieu of suspension passed the House and the Senate and should be on the governor's desk for signature. What other bills were we following? Let's see. The Brownfields tax credit that Senator John and Representative Giroux put forward is in appropriations, where also the business personal property tax exemption is in appropriations, so we'll see how it makes it out after the long bill winds its way through. In the finance world, municipal bond investments, that was House Bill 1103, has been signed by the governor, so hopefully that's good news for us. Public funding on community development financial institutions is before the governor for signature. And I think in the state, preemption of development standards was postponed indefinitely, so that should not come back to haunt us this year. And I think that concludes my legislative report. And in District 1 activities, we've got a lot of construction happening on the east side of town. We're moving forward with the detention pond and the storm drainage system over at Chase Street. Well, looking good. Ashland Reservoir, if you have a chance to go by there, they're putting up their forms for a pour on the big tank. Always an interesting project. And if those weren't enough, Publix Xcel Energy is putting new gas lines in the street. So it's a great time to walk. Thank you.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
I really don't have much. The Wheat Ridge Business District was very busy. We approved about 8 or so grants to various businesses. I didn't bring all the details, but they've been very active.
Thank you. If you'll pass out, right. There's something I want to sort of report on. When we were in Washington, D.C., I'm sure you remember there was one conversation, one presentation we had from Senator Bennett's staff regarding it's called a Partnership to Build America Act. And what it is, and I hope that I understand this, because to me it's a little complicated, but it's really a pretty smart idea. The concept is that corporations have overseas operations, and that money is very taxable to them, so they leave it, and they leave it in those foreign countries. And the concept is that we what's called repatriate that money so that it can come back here. And what our government is going to do, or what is proposed to do, is that for a certain percentage of how much money they bring back, that they won't be charged those taxes on it, on a certain percentage of it, if that money becomes available for construction, for our roads and bridges and all of the things that are so lacking. So at the Metro Mayor's Conference, caucus, recently, you'll see a draft going along, and it is something that, as a representative of that, I'm representing our council here, and unless I object to it, we are agreeing to this concept, which is bipartisan, which does not cost the taxpayers any money. No funds come forward from our treasury. So it's a very brilliant concept. And loans are available then to cities like ours to borrow money for some capital improvement projects at market rates, and which are guaranteed by the federal government. So I'm just letting you know kind of what's going on, and that I personally think that this is a very, very good financing system. And Tulio, you have a question?
No, just a comment. I wanted to say, I think that, in Wheat Ridge, the mayor isn't part of city council, so I think you should have the right and the ability to take a stand on something at Metro Mayor's Caucus as the mayor that I don't think you have to check in all the time with city
Right.
council. I mean, you can if you want, but I think as being a separate position from the city, you're not part of the council like most of the other ones are. I think you have that ability and that right to take a stand.
And I'm
you
aware
need
of
to.
that. Yeah, and thank you. The reason I brought this up because it could have some very positive effects, and mostly I wanted to let you know that there's several other positions that have come before us or before me, and but this one I thought was particularly interesting. Okay? All right. There's nothing more. I think we can close the meeting.